In a forgotten village nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains, a chilling legend was whispered among the old-timers. They spoke of the Crimson Feast, a night when the dead walked among the living, and those who ventured out were never seen again. The village had long been cursed, its history stained with blood and shadow, a place where the boundary between life and death had grown perilously thin. Elena, a young woman with a restless spirit, had always been drawn to the mysterious and the unknown. The tales of the Crimson Feast intrigued her, and despite the villagers' grim warnings, she decided to uncover the truth for herself. Her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. Armed with a flickering lantern and her determination, she ventured into the forest on the night of the full moon, a night when the village fell into an eerie, unnatural silence. The forest was unnervingly silent, save for the crunch of leaves beneath her feet. The towering trees seemed to lean closer as she walked, their twisted branches forming grotesque shapes against the darkening sky. As she delved deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, each breath visible as a wisp of fog in the frigid night. The fog itself was unnatural, creeping through the forest like a living thing, thickening with each step she took, as if guiding her towards something wicked. Hours seemed to pass, though it was impossible to tell how much time had truly gone by. Finally, through the oppressive fog, Elena stumbled upon an ancient manor, hidden deep within the woods. The manor stood like a decaying sentinel, its once grand facade now crumbling, ivy and moss clinging to its stone walls like the grasping hands of the dead. The air around it was thick with the scent of decay, a foul mixture of rot and damp earth, and the windows seemed to glow with a faint, ominous light, as if something sinister within was beckoning her. Elena hesitated at the entrance, the heavy wooden doors standing as a final barrier between her and the unknown horrors that awaited inside. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a reminder of her own mortality, but the pull of the manor was irresistible. With trembling hands, she pushed the doors open and stepped inside, her lantern casting flickering shadows on the decrepit walls. The interior was a mausoleum of forgotten memories, frozen in time. The grand foyer was littered with the remnants of what must have once been a luxurious home, faded tapestries, cracked marble, and dusty chandeliers that swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. The walls seemed to breathe with a life of their own, the wallpaper peeling back like dead skin. But what truly captured Elena's attention was the grand dining hall at the center of the manor. The long table was set for a feast, as if expecting guests that had never arrived. Silverware and goblets glistened under the dim light of the chandelier, but the food had long since spoiled, turning to a blackened, unrecognizable mush. The wine in the goblets had thickened into a dark, congealed blood-like substance that gave off a metallic stench. Elena's heart raced as she realized that this was no ordinary table setting. It was a macabre reenactment of the Crimson Feast, frozen in a grotesque parody of life. Her gaze was drawn to the portraits lining the walls. They depicted a family, their eyes cold and lifeless, yet there was something disturbingly familiar about them. The longer Elena stared, the more the faces in the paintings seemed to shift and change, the eyes following her with malevolent intent. A chill ran down her spine as she recognized the faces. They were the villagers, their features twisted into expressions of hunger and despair. Among them, to her horror, she saw her own face, painted with a sickening accuracy. Before she could react, the doors behind her slammed shut with a deafening crash, sealing her inside. The air grew heavy, suffocating, and a cold gust of wind extinguished her lantern, plunging the room into darkness. Elena's breathing became rapid and shallow, her pulse pounding in her ears as she frantically searched for an escape. But the silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing through the hall like the tolling of a death knell. Elena turned, her blood running cold as she saw figures emerging from the shadows. Their pale skin glowed faintly in the dark, their eyes black voids that reflected no light, and their mouths curled into sinister smiles that revealed elongated fangs. They were the vampires of the legend, the undead who had once been the very villagers who now feared them, cursed to walk the earth as predators of the night. Panic surged through Elena, but her feet felt rooted to the spot, as if the very ground beneath her had turned to quicksand. The vampires moved closer, surrounding her, their cold hands reaching out, brushing against her skin with the touch of death itself. She could feel their breath on her neck, a mix of decay and iron, a reminder of the blood they craved. The leader, a tall figure with sharp features and blood-red eyes, leaned in close, his voice a venomous whisper that sent chills down her spine. "Welcome to the Crimson Feast, dear Elena. You should have heeded the warnings." With a swift, inhuman movement, he sank his fangs into her neck. The pain was sharp and searing, like fire coursing through her veins. Elena screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness, her voice a mere echo in the vast, empty halls. She could feel the life draining from her, her blood being consumed by the monstrous beings around her. The world began to blur, her vision fading as she felt herself slipping away, the edges of her consciousness fraying like a thread being pulled from a tapestry. But death did not come. Instead, Elena awoke to a terrible hunger, an insatiable thirst that gnawed at her very soul. Her skin was cold, her heart no longer beat, and her reflection in the cracked mirror showed a face she barely recognized. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, were now as black as the void, her lips stained with the blood of the innocent. She was no longer human. The vampires had claimed her, turning her into one of them, cursed to walk the earth as a creature of the night, forever bound to the Crimson Feast. The village would never be the same. The Crimson Feast had claimed another victim, and Elena, once a curious young woman, was now part of the legend, a warning to those who dared to venture into the darkness. Her face joined the others in the portraits on the manor walls, her eyes following the next unfortunate soul who would enter the cursed place. And so, the manor stood silent once more, its secrets hidden beneath layers of decay. But the scent of blood lingered in the air, a reminder of the horrors that lay within. On nights when the moon was full, the villagers would hear the faint echoes of laughter and the clinking of goblets, as the undead celebrated their eternal feast, waiting for the next fool to join their ranks.